The text message glowed on Dana's phone like a neon sign in a dive bar window. Can't wait to feel you again tonight, beautiful. G. I stood there in our garage, grease still coating my hands from fixing the Hendersons' busted furnace, staring at my wife's phone that had buzzed while she showered upstairs. 23 years of marriage, and this is how I find out I'm sharing her with some guy named G. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. The water was still running upstairs when I heard our doorbell ring. Through the frosted glass, I could make out a tall figure holding what looked like flowers. My gut twisted as I connected the dots faster than a mechanic diagnosing a blown gasket. "Dana!" I called up the stairs, my voice steady despite the rage building in my chest. "Your boyfriend's here." The water shut off immediately. Silence. I opened the door to find a guy in his mid-30s, all styled hair and expensive cologne, holding a bouquet of roses like some romantic comedy reject. His smile faltered when he saw me. A 42-year-old HVAC contractor in work clothes, definitely not who he expected. I think I have the wrong house," he stammered. "Grant Beck?" I asked, reading his name from the business card sticking out of his shirt pocket. His face went white. "Yeah, you're in the right place. Come on in. Dana will be down in a minute." Grant hesitated, but I stepped aside with a welcoming gesture. The poor bastard actually walked into my house, probably thinking he could charm his way out of this mess. "Dana," I called again. "Grant's here with flowers." She appeared at the top of the stairs, wrapped in a towel, her face cycling through confusion, horror, and panic in about 3 seconds. It would have been entertaining if it wasn't my life imploding. "Caleb, I can explain." "Oh, I'm sure you can." I pulled out my phone and started recording. But first, Grant here was just about to tell me how long you two have been screwing behind my back. Grant dropped the flowers. "Look, man, I didn't know she was married." "Bullshit." I kept the camera rolling. "You sent her a text 20 minutes ago talking about feeling her again tonight. That doesn't sound like a first-time thing." Dana clutched her towel tighter. "Caleb, please, let's talk about this privately." "Privately?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Like how you've been privately meeting Grant here for the past, 6 months? 8? Grant's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. "I should go." "Not yet." I stepped between him and the door. "First, I want you to say your full name for the camera and where you work." "I'm not doing that." "Grant Beck, Midwest Medical Supply," I read from his business card, holding it up to the camera. "Sales representative. Married to Jennifer Beck, 2 kids, lives on Maple Street." His face went from white to green. "How do you know that?" "Small town, Grant. Everyone knows everyone." I stopped recording and forwarded the video to Dana's work email while they both watched. "Including your wife." Dana started crying. Grant started sweating. I felt nothing but cold satisfaction. "Get out of my house," I told Grant, "and take your wilted flowers with you." He scrambled for the door like his ass was on fire. Dana collapsed on the stairs, sobbing into her towel. I looked at my wife of 23 years and felt something fade inside my chest. "We'll finish this conversation when you're dressed." By morning, half the town knew about Dana's affair. Barb Morrison, our 70-year-old neighbor who treated gossip like an Olympic sport, had seen Grant leaving our house at 9 p.m. looking like he'd been hit by a truck. She'd already called her sister, who worked at the bank with Dana's friend Shannon. I sat in my truck outside Morrison's Hardware, watching Dana's text messages blow up my phone. Apologies mixed with blame, tears mixed with anger. The usual cheater's playbook. My business phone rang. Jim Patterson, my biggest commercial client. "Caleb, I hate to do this, but we're going to have to find another HVAC contractor." "What?" "Jim, we've worked together for 8 years. What's going on?" "Look, I heard about your situation. My wife doesn't want us associated with someone who can't handle his own household. Bad for our image." The line went silent. I stared at the phone, feeling the first crack in my armor. Dana hadn't just cheated on me. She'd started a domino effect that was going to destroy everything I'd built. 3 more clients called that morning. Same story. Apparently Dana's friend Shannon had been busy, spinning the narrative that I was an abusive husband who'd driven his poor wife into another man's arms. I drove to Murphy's gym, where Coach Ray was training some high school kids. Ray had been my boxing trainer back when I was young and stupid enough to think I could go pro. Now he was just the closest thing I had to a father figure. "Heard about Dana," he said without looking up from wrapping a kid's hands. "You holding up?" "Define holding up?" "You thinking about doing something stupid?" I watched the kid throw punches at a heavy bag, putting everything he had into each swing. Depends on your definition of stupid. Ray finished with the kid and walked over to me. Caleb, I've seen a lot of men get their hearts ripped out. The ones who survive are the ones who fight smart, not hard. What's that supposed to mean? Means maybe it's time people saw the real Dana Morris. That afternoon, I drove to Dana's office building. Midwest Insurance occupied the second floor of a glass rectangle that screamed corporate mediocrity. Dana worked as an office coordinator, basically a secretary with a fancy title. I found her in the break room with Shannon Reese, the HR manager who'd apparently appointed herself Dana's crisis counselor. Shannon was a 41-year-old woman who'd never met a drama she couldn't insert herself into. Caleb, Shannon stood up like she was defending territory. Dana doesn't want to see you right now. That's funny, Shannon, because Dana doesn't get to make that choice. We're still married. Dana looked up from her coffee cup. Her eyes were red and puffy, but I noticed she'd still put on makeup and her good jewelry, playing the victim, but making sure she looked good doing it. I told you I was sorry, she whispered. Sorry doesn't undo what happened with Grant Beck. Shannon gasped. There's no need for that language. I turned to Shannon, feeling something dark and satisfying uncurl in my chest. You know what, Shannon? You're right. There's no need for a lot of things, like wives screwing around behind their husbands' backs, or friends encouraging them to do it. I never encouraged bullshit. I pulled out my phone and showed them a screenshot of Dana's group chat with Shannon and 2 other women. Right here, Shannon. Life's too short to waste on boring men. That was your advice 3 months ago, right before Dana started her little affair. Dana's face went white. How did you get that? Doesn't matter. What matters is that both of you seem to think I'm just going to roll over and take this. I looked around the break room, noting the other employees pretending not to listen while hanging on every word. Here's what's going to happen, I said loudly enough for everyone to hear. Dana, you can keep screwing Grant Beck if you want, but you're going to do it on your own dime, in your own place, without my name attached to any of it. I walked out of the break room and straight to the elevator, leaving behind a silence so thick you could cut it with a knife. That night, I changed all the passwords on our joint accounts and transferred our savings to a business account Dana couldn't touch. I called a locksmith and had the house locks changed. Then I sat in my kitchen, drinking a beer and waiting for the storm to hit. Dana came home at 11 p.m. to find her key didn't work. She pounded on the door for 20 minutes before I opened it. Her mascara had run, her hair was a mess, and she looked like exactly what she was, a cheater who'd finally hit consequences. You can't lock me out of my own house. My house, I corrected. My name on the deed, my money that paid for it. That's not legal. Actually, it is. I called my lawyer. Turns out adultery gives me a lot of options in this state. She pushed past me into the living room. Caleb, we need to talk about this like adults. Adults don't sleep with their coworkers behind their spouse's back. I made a mistake. A mistake is forgetting to pick up milk. This was a choice. Multiple choices, over multiple months. I sat down in my recliner and gestured to the couch. But you're right. We should talk. Let's start with how long you've been planning to leave me. I wasn't planning to leave you. Then why did you move $15,000 from our savings to your personal account last week? Her mouth opened and closed without sound. Yeah, I saw that too. Along with the apartment listings you've been looking at. And the consultation with divorce lawyer Patricia Mills? Dana collapsed onto the couch. How do you know all this? Because I'm not the stupid, boring husband you and Shannon think I am. Over the next hour, the whole sordid story came out. The affair had started 4 months ago at a company mixer. Grant had been charming, attentive, everything she felt I wasn't. Shannon had encouraged her to explore her options and think about her happiness. I felt invisible, Dana said through fresh tears, like I was just going through the motions of being married. So instead of talking to me about it, you decided to solve the problem with another man's dick. She flinched. Don't be crude. Crude? You want to see crude? I pulled out my phone and showed her the screenshots I'd taken of her text conversations with Grant. Here's you telling him how much better he is in bed than me. Here's you making fun of my work clothes. Here's you planning to meet him at the Riverside Motel while I was working a double shift to pay for your new car. Each screenshot hit her like a physical blow. By the time I finished, she was sobbing into her hands. I can forgive the affair, I lied smoothly, but I can't forgive the disrespect, the mockery, the way you turned our marriage into a joke for your girlfriends to laugh at. I never meant... You meant every word, and now everyone in town knows exactly what kind of woman you are. Her head snapped up. What do you mean? I smiled, and even I could tell it wasn't a nice smile. I mean, I forwarded all those screenshots to Grant's wife this afternoon, along with the hotel receipts I found in your car. Jennifer Beck was very interested to learn what her husband's been doing on his business trips. Dana's face went from red to white to green in about 5 seconds. You didn't. I also sent copies to Grant's boss at Midwest Medical Supply. Turns out using company credit cards for personal hotel stays is grounds for immediate termination. She stood up so fast she knocked over her coffee cup. You bastard. You're destroying people's lives. I'm not destroying anything. I'm just making sure everyone knows the truth. The next morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls from Dana and 12 from Shannon. I ignored them all and drove to my shop, where my remaining employees were already at work. Boss, my foreman Mike called out. We got a problem. What kind of problem? 3 more clients canceled this morning. Word's getting around that you're difficult to work with. I felt that cold satisfaction spread through my chest again. Let me guess. They all heard it from someone who heard it from Shannon Reese. Mike nodded. What are you going to do? I'm going to remind this town that there are 2 sides to every story. I spent the morning making phone calls, not to clients, to their wives. See, in a small town like ours, the real power doesn't lie with the men who sign the checks. It lies with the women who decide which contractors get recommended at book club meetings and church socials. I told them the truth, all of it. How Dana had been cheating for months. How Shannon had been encouraging her. How they'd been mocking me behind my back while I worked 60-hour weeks to support a lifestyle Dana felt entitled to. I didn't have to embellish anything. The facts were damning enough. By noon, my phone was ringing with new jobs. Apparently, there were a lot of women in town who didn't appreciate homewreckers and the friends who enabled them. Shannon called me that afternoon, her voice shaking with rage. You son of a bitch, Dana's been fired. That's unfortunate. You know damn well it's your fault. You've been spreading lies about her all over town. I haven't told a single lie, Shannon. Everything I've shared is documented fact. You're destroying her life. She destroyed her own life. I'm just making sure she doesn't get to rewrite history. There was a long pause. When Shannon spoke again, her voice was different, colder. You think you're so smart, don't you, Caleb? You think you've won? I think I've leveled the playing field. You have no idea what you've started. The line went silent. Something about her tone bothered me, but I couldn't put my finger on what. That evening, I was closing up my shop when Grant Beck appeared in my doorway. He looked like hell. Unshaven, wrinkled clothes, eyes red with either exhaustion or tears. We need to talk, he said. No, we really don't. Please, just 5 minutes. Against my better judgment, I let him in. He slumped into a chair across from my desk like a man carrying the weight of the world. My wife left me, he said. Took the kids to her mother's in Ohio. I'm sorry to hear that. No, you're not. You're glad. He was right, but I didn't say so. I lost my job, too. 20 years with the company gone. Actions have consequences, Grant. I know that. He looked up at me with something like desperation. But it wasn't supposed to happen like this. What wasn't supposed to happen like this? Any of it. The affair, getting caught, losing everything. He ran his hands through his hair. Shannon said it would be clean. Said you'd never find out. Something cold settled in my stomach. Shannon said what? She set the whole thing up. Introduced me to Dana at that company mixer, kept pushing us together, told Dana you were probably cheating anyway, so she might as well have some fun. The pieces started clicking together in my head. Why would Shannon do that? Because she hates you, man. Really, truly hates you. I barely know Shannon. You fired her. I stared at him. What? 3 years ago. She applied for a job at your company, some kind of office manager position. You turned her down, said she wasn't qualified. The memory came flooding back. Shannon Reese had applied to be my business coordinator when I was expanding. Her resume was impressive, but something about her had rubbed me wrong during the interview. She'd been condescending, talking down to my employees, making suggestions about how I should run my business before she was even hired. I remember her, I said slowly. She was completely wrong for the job. Maybe, but she's been nursing that grudge ever since. When she found out Dana was married to you, she saw an opportunity for revenge. Grant leaned forward. She's been playing us both, man. Dana thinks Shannon's her friend, but Shannon's been manipulating her from the start, pushing her toward the affair, encouraging her to disrespect you, feeding her lines about how she deserves better. And you went along with it. I didn't know. I thought Dana was just an unhappy wife looking for attention. Shannon made it sound like you were this terrible husband who ignored her. I thought about all the clients who'd dropped me, all citing the same story about me being difficult and abusive. I thought about how quickly that narrative had spread through town. Shannon's been spreading rumors about me. Grant nodded. She's got connections everywhere. HR departments, church groups, book clubs. She's been systematically destroying your reputation while positioning herself as Dana's savior. Why are you telling me this? Because I'm messed either way, and at least this way maybe I can do one decent thing. He stood up. Shannon's not done with you, Caleb. Losing Dana's job wasn't part of her plan. She's pissed, and she's going to escalate. What's that supposed to mean? It means you better watch your back. After Grant left, I sat in my office staring at the wall. Everything made sense now. Shannon's immediate involvement in Dana's crisis, her aggressive defense of Dana, the coordinated campaign against my business. Shannon Reese had orchestrated my wife's affair as revenge for a job rejection 3 years ago. I pulled out my phone and started making calls. It took me 2 days to gather everything I needed. Shannon thought she was smart, but she'd made one crucial mistake. She'd underestimated me. The first thing I discovered was that Shannon had been embezzling from Midwest Insurance for over a year. Small amounts, carefully hidden, but traceable if you knew what to look for. And I knew exactly where to look because Grant had mentioned Shannon's sudden ability to afford expensive lunches and shopping trips. The second thing I found was Shannon's own affair. While she was encouraging Dana to cheat on me, she was screwing her boss, Martin Webb, the married father of 3 who owned the insurance agency. The third thing was the most interesting. Shannon had been planning to frame me for harassment. She'd been documenting every interaction we'd had, twisting my words, building a case to get a restraining order that would have destroyed what was left of my reputation. But Shannon had made one critical error. She'd put everything in writing. I found her private emails, her text messages, her detailed plans to destroy that arrogant asshole Caleb Morris. She'd documented her own conspiracy like a villain in a bad movie. Friday night, I made my move. The Riverside bar was packed with the usual crowd. Blue-collar workers, office drones, and middle-aged people pretending they were still young. Dana was there with Shannon and 2 other women from the office, drinking Cosmos and playing the victim. I walked in, wearing my best jeans and a clean shirt, looking nothing like the broken husband they expected. Conversation stopped as I made my way to their table. "Ladies," I said pleasantly, "mind if I join you?" Shannon started to stand. "You need to leave, Caleb." "Actually, Shannon, I think everyone here would be interested in what I have to say." I pulled out my phone and connected it to the bar's sound system. The bartender, Tommy Martinez, had been a friend since high school. He'd agreed to help me make sure everyone could hear. "See, I've learned some interesting things this week," I said into the microphone. Things about friendship, loyalty, and revenge. Dana looked confused. Shannon looked terrified. For instance, I learned that my wife's affair wasn't a spontaneous thing. It was carefully planned and orchestrated by someone who's been pretending to be her friend. I started playing audio recordings. Shannon encouraging Dana to cheat, Shannon bad-mouthing me, Shannon planning my social destruction. The bar had gone completely silent, except for Shannon's voice coming through the speakers, talking about how she was going to make that bastard pay for humiliating me. "Shannon Reese, everyone," I said, "the woman who destroyed my marriage because I wouldn't hire her 3 years ago." Shannon lunged for my phone. I stepped aside and let her stumble into a table. "But wait, there's more," I continued. "Shannon's been embezzling from her employer to fund her revenge fantasy. She's also been sleeping with her married boss while lecturing my wife about the sanctity of marriage." I played more recordings, showed bank statements, displayed text messages between Shannon and Martin Webb that would have made a porn star blush. Dana was staring at Shannon like she'd never seen her before. You used me." "Dana, don't listen to him. You used me to get back at him for a job rejection." The entire bar was watching now, phones out, recording everything. In a town this size, this would be the story everyone talked about for years. 23 years, I said, looking directly at Dana. 23 years of marriage, and you threw it away because Shannon Reese told you to. Dana started crying. Not the pretty tears she'd been shedding all week, but ugly, broken sobs. Shannon made one last desperate play. "None of this is legal. You can't record private conversations." "Actually, I can. This is a one-party consent state, Shannon. Every conversation I recorded included me as a participant." I disconnected my phone from the sound system and looked around the bar. "I want everyone here to understand something. I'm not the victim in this story. I'm the villain. I'm the man who destroyed 3 lives because someone tried to destroy mine first." I walked over to Dana's table and dropped a manila envelope in front of her. "Divorce papers. I've already signed them. The house is yours, along with all the debt. The business is mine, along with all the assets I built before I met you. I turned to Shannon. Your boss will receive copies of all your financial records on Monday morning. The IRS will get theirs on Tuesday. Finally, I looked around the bar one more time. They wanted a villain, I said, so I became one. I walked out of the bar into the cool night air, leaving behind a silence so complete you could hear hearts breaking. Monday morning brought exactly the chaos I'd expected. Shannon was fired and arrested for embezzlement. Martin Webb resigned in disgrace. Dana moved back in with her parents while the divorce was finalized. But I wasn't done. Tuesday afternoon, I drove to the high school gymnasium where the annual charity auction was being held. Half the town was there, including most of the people who'd dropped me as a client based on Shannon's lies. I'd paid $500 for a sponsorship that gave me 5 minutes at the podium to talk about my business. But I had something else in mind. Good evening, everyone, I said into the microphone. I'm Caleb Morris, Morris Heating and Cooling. Scattered applause, mostly from people who felt obligated. I want to tell you all a story about marriage, friendship, and revenge. The applause faded. People shifted uncomfortably in their seats. 3 months ago, my wife started an affair with a man named Grant Beck. But that affair wasn't a crime of passion or a moment of weakness. It was the end result of a carefully planned campaign of psychological manipulation orchestrated by Shannon Reese. I had their attention now, complete horrified attention. Shannon convinced my wife that I was a terrible husband. She arranged meetings between Dana and Grant. She encouraged the affair every step of the way. And she did it all because I wouldn't give her a job 3 years ago. I pulled out a stack of papers. I have documentation of everything, the planning, the manipulation, the embezzlement Shannon used to fund her revenge. I have recordings of her admitting that she destroyed my marriage for fun. Someone in the audience gasped. I couldn't tell who. But here's the thing about revenge. It's a game anyone can play. I looked out over the crowd, making eye contact with as many people as possible. Shannon thought she was smart. She thought she could destroy me, and I'd never figure out who was really pulling the strings. She was wrong. I held up my phone. This contains 3 years' worth of evidence documenting Shannon's various schemes, affairs, and criminal activities. It also contains recordings of every person in this town who was willing to believe lies about me without asking for my side of the story. The silence was deafening. I'm not looking for sympathy or forgiveness. I'm just making sure everyone understands exactly what happened here. I paused, letting the weight of my words settle over the crowd. Shannon Reese destroyed my marriage because she could, so I destroyed her life because I could. My wife chose to believe lies about me rather than trust the man she'd been married to for 23 years. So I chose to divorce her and let her face the consequences of that choice alone. I looked directly at Jim Patterson, my former biggest client. Some of you chose to believe I was an abusive husband based on nothing but gossip. So I chose to let you find new contractors and deal with their higher prices and lower quality work. I stepped back from the microphone and smiled. They say revenge is a dish best served cold, but I prefer mine served publicly, with documentation and with enough evidence to ensure everyone knows exactly who the real villains are. I walked off the stage and out of the gymnasium, leaving behind a crowd of people who finally understood they'd been played by a master manipulator, and that I'd played her right back. Outside in the parking lot, I found Dana waiting by my truck. She looked smaller somehow, diminished. "Caleb," she said quietly. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." "I know you are. Is there any chance we could try again? Start over?" I looked at the woman I'd loved for 23 years, the woman who'd thrown away our marriage because someone else told her to, and felt nothing but pity. "No, Dana, there's not." "But I was manipulated. Shannon used me." "Shannon gave you permission to do what you already wanted to do. She didn't force you to cheat. She just made it easier." Dana started crying again. "I made a mistake. You made a choice, and now you get to live with it." I got in my truck and drove away, leaving her standing alone in the parking lot under the streetlights. 6 months later, my business was thriving. Turns out people respect a man who fights back when he's wronged, even if they're afraid of him. Especially if they're afraid of him. Shannon was serving 18 months for embezzlement and fraud. Grant had moved to another state to start over. Dana was working as a cashier at the grocery store and living in a studio apartment on the wrong side of town. I'd bought a new house on the lake, smaller than the old one, but entirely mine. No shared memories, no ghosts of a failed marriage, no reminders of the man I used to be. People in town treated me differently now, with respect, but also with caution. I was the man who'd systematically destroyed everyone who'd wronged him. I was the villain who'd won. And you know what? I was perfectly fine with that. Some nights, sitting on my deck watching the sunset over the water, I wondered if I should feel guilty about the lives I'd ruined. But then I'd remember Shannon's laugh as she planned my destruction, or Dana's voice mocking me to her friends, and the guilt would fade. They'd wanted to make me the villain in their story, so I'd embraced the role and played it better than they ever imagined possible. I raised my beer to the setting sun and smiled. "Here's to getting exactly what you deserve," I said to no one in particular. The lake was quiet. The town was quiet. And for the first time in years, so was my mind. They'd called me boring, predictable, easy to manipulate. They'd been wrong about all of it. I wasn't the victim in this story. I was the monster they'd created, and I'd exceeded their wildest expectations.